finally, hopefully having shown those two principles, no motility, no gravity, and then furthermore, the notion of what constitutes hooking up. It's not playing the characters, it is looking for physical, social slash institutional, um, and other similar associative things. Um, the followers in the blog is probably as far as I would go into softer or activity based territory. So, and if you have the choice, I mean, if things that are very physically associated and stuff like that, leave those sort of more activity based ones just out. You don't need to go there. Especially in sheets which have more things on them than Bev's does. I'm happier with 10 to 12. I said 8 to 10 to people in this demo just so that we don't go nuts. And looking at one here that I ended up with 8, and it feels a little skeletal. Could have used like maybe 2 or 3 more on there, and I would have really felt good with all a nice look at the kicker, a nice look at the price, etc. Although in this case, as I say, the sign is the only thing in the kicker for everybody but Keenan. Okay, so here we go. I've got the third one to illustrate one more idea, or at least a set of decisions that I made. And in this case, the dice gave me Charlene Reeves, who is the edgy veteran. And then the lore, as it turns out, of the 4 sets that I made 6 characters and 4 lore sets. And of them, 2 of them, I made coven members with the same coven. Again, this was a demo. I wanted to kind of cut to the chase in a couple of ways. And in that case, so I got that this time. So we got another coven member, and it is the same coven with the same telltale of that modified cross. So, okay. Little simple, not showing as much diversity off from my prep as I could have, but you'll see a couple of interesting things illustrated by this. So what do we get with Charlene? We find that as this edgy vet, that what she's got is actually an unregistered and clean or cold 38 pistol. So it has no history of crime. It's never been associated with anything bad, and is effectively, anonymous. And she has it. She has one because she's an edgy vet. And so, all right then, stereotype away as you may like or not, depending on how you look at these things. So, looking through the other parts of what has been given to me, we find that she has, as I called it in the sheet, the grab bag of prescription pills. So her price is actually that she's mean. And so she's got all these issues surrounding that. One is, medications. And at this point in her life, it's not quite the medications as prescribed so much as those mixed and matched with whatever she may have come across or traded for or something like that. So she's got kind of a grab bag of pills in there. And then also she has a restraining order on her. So she's got the notification of the restraining order that she's required to carry around. And she has a case officer. There's somebody who's, her meanness has really got her into trouble. She's got a case officer. She's, not handling the medication very well, and she's got already legal action against her. So if I wanted to, I could probably put a little more backstory into that restraining order and associate it with characters, like who filed it and why, and then that character would be in there, or maybe a location, and that's fine. But I'm not going that far right now. I could probably ask the player, during play, if I needed to. So those are all over there. And then up in lore, I drew a different demon and lore set. And as I said, I got the coven again. It's a different demon, but it's the same coven. And so we have those similarities. And this particular demon is also kind of an autonomous creature roaming about. And you can kind of get the idea that the coven, gets demons like this. And in this case, it's a dog. It's an inconspicuous demon, so it's effectively invisible or unnoticeable. And it's a weirdly humanoid looking dog. Its paws are almost hands, and its dog face is too human looking, and it's kind of a cool demon too in lots of ways. It's a very, let's just say, you can now understand. If you knew that demon, look at the rules for it, you'll see how Charlene has stayed out of prison or stayed alive with this thing around. So, all right, that's sets us to the point where we want to look at these lists, and I'm not thinking about a diagram at all. I'm just looking at the list and saying, what more about this person can I add to these lists to kind of round it out into a character that I can really feel in my mind, like I did with Keenan and like I did with Bev. And in this case, a bunch of stuff occurs to me. The question of where do you live comes up again. It has for all three characters. It's kind of a standard for me when I'm making up a sorcerer diagram. And I see that unlike Bev, whose living space is part of her price, but more like Keenan, where it's just part of her ordinarily and understandable way of life. And I'm thinking about, well, let's cut Charlene a little slack here, and say that she's got a stable living situation. Although being Charlene in my mind, that's not always entirely normal, and it just comes to my mind. She is staying at the apartment of her ex-brother-in-law. Not that she's been married, but she had perhaps a sister, and had a sister, and this is the former husband of that person. I'm thinking, it's all coming to me right now. I'm like, oh, Charlene, this guy get along. They always got along. They, respect each other, like each other. She understands the history, doesn't hold anything against him, and when she, needed a place to stay badly, like, what's your fixed address, Ms. Reeves, kind of thing, she was able to provide it. He was like, oh, this is her fixed address. And so, okay, not bad. So it's not like she has, much of a place there, but he's good with it. It's not unstable. So and of course I'm thinking, I've been calling him the Buddy in my mind. I was like, well, fuck, his name's Buddy. All right, Buddy. So he goes on there too. Buddy's place, Buddy. Put that in cover. When you get kind of this amused or sort of appreciative notion of the rounding out of the character, when you make up more items to put in the diagram, I always feel like that's a good sign. So anything else that crops up, kind of in that sense of more warmth about the character? Well, it's a dog, so I'm feeling that Charlene also carries around a handful of dog treats, like little dry things, bacon smelling kind of things, and she tries to give them to the demon dog. Now that doesn't mean that the demon dog likes or cares about them. That's not its need, and so it doesn't. But it's kind of Charlene sort of overhumanizes it a little bit, or overdogs it, if you will, and has these treats around in case it wants them someday, or, tries to give them to it. So that's just a detail. And I put the dog treats in the lore. And then anything else? Why, yes. Okay, well, she's mean, right? She's got this backstory. How does that apply in her daily life today? And I instantly thought of when she goes to church and listens to the Reverend, because I get the idea that that's kind of how she kills time and sometimes cares about it. She has a spot, where she sits, my spot. And anybody takes one look at Charlene sitting in the spot and they're like, whoa, I do not need that spot. So my spot goes into price. And with all that stated, we add this sign, and I say, all right, now let's do some moving about. Now, this becomes especially interesting in terms of physical location, because there's nothing that pulls together socially or institutionally, but physically. And it might strike you as way too mundane. You're like, well, that's no big deal. There's no story there. This isn't prep. It's not a bang. I don't understand. Trust me. 38, the pills, and the dog treats are all in her pockets. They're all in the same spot, and they're habitually all in the same spot. She puts that coat on, and all those things are there. Huh. Okay. Okay. We move those. Now, that means that the cold 38 and the pills are, since they're in opposite sectors, they're going to pull together and have to be in the middle. And nothing goes with the cold 38. But trailing after the pills comes the restraining order, because she carries that around too. Sometimes I'm thinking that it's not as definite. And then the case officer is kind of where they were, but you should kind of think of the case officer and the restraining order as having a bit of a connection there. And then the dog treats, instead of, since those two things have come to the center, then that has to go to the center too, because that's where they are. It's not, if they were in just adjacent sectors, then they would have gone to a corner. But since all three in these adjacent sectors have been connected, then wham, that's where they have to go. So that leaves everything else pretty much exactly where it is. So that would be, in 2 steps, Charlene's. So I'm looking at these 3.